Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Tampa Bay Real Producers. We are none other than the podcast made for real producers, by real producers, and with none other than Tampa Bay's real producers. And so we're excited today to have none other than Mr. Tony Baroni on the show, man. Good to see you. When I say your name, by the way, a lot of people who might not know you, they just always get a kick out of the name. It just kind of rolls right off the tongue, like Tony Baroni, you know?
I hear that a lot. They can't just say Tony and they just can't say Baroni.
You got to combine the two. It just kind of flows perfectly, you know? So for those of you who might not know Tony, I know he's very well known in this market, but Tony was the very first cover that we ever did with Tampa Bay Real Producers back in 2019. Crazy. That was already, 4 years ago already?
Happened like that.
Yeah, it really did. It really did. So Tony and his team was the first feature we did as our cover agent, and we've had a great relationship with Tony ever since. He's been on a couple of our panels now over the years, and is very well respected. Actually won the Team of the Year this past year on the Agent Choice Awards event that we did back in March. So it's great to have you here, man. When we first launched this podcast, you were one of the first people I thought of as like, we got to get Tony on there at some point. So
yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm glad we could finally make it. Yeah, no doubt. Pleasure's all ours. So why don't we start with just your background a little bit, and people who might not know, did you grow up in this area? How'd you get yourself into Tampa, if not? And where did this journey into real estate even start for you?
Yeah, so I grew up in Illinois, so not Florida, and
Midwest guy.
Yes,
I know you're always
small town.
Commenting on my Yankees post with "Go Cardinals." I noticed.
Yep, from the good old Midwest. So I grew up in Illinois, small town. Went to school at Illinois State University, and then graduated there. Well, during that time, when I was in Illinois in college, I'd visit here once or twice a year, and I remember thinking, "Wow, that's a new road.
Yep,
that's a new mall." And I thought to myself, good opportunity potentially to move to Florida.
Sure.
And I think I was in 7th or 8th grade, Don, when I was Clearwater Beach watching the sunset. And I'm like, why don't I live here? And
I could relate to that.
And my parents didn't agree with me, right? So we were in Illinois. And so I said, hey, when I graduate college, I'm moving to Florida. And that's exactly what I did.
So you left right after school then and came right down.
Yep. Actually, our RIP to Jimmy Buffett, went to Wisconsin. Saw a show, and Alpine Valley, for those that know that venue.
Yeah.
Went to a Buffett show, got in my car, stopped off at home, said goodbye to my parents, drove straight here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, what was it about you visited this area because you had family down here? Or?
I did. Yeah, I do. Had an older sister here, and she's actually still here.
Okay.
And so she let me visit once or twice a year, and, probably... make a mess of her house and have friends over and stuff like that.
There you go.
She gave us a little refuge when we wanted warm weather. And every year I'd come back and I'm like, wow, this is a great opportunity. And where I was from, especially Illinois State University, State Farm headquarters is there. So most people were like, I want to land a job at State Farm. And I'm like, that's not what I want to do.
That wasn't the Baroni
No
dream.
offense to Jake out there, right? But for me, I was like, I wanted to chase the sunshine, and I wanted good weather, and I thought, why not? I have nothing holding me back. My dad actually grew up in San Francisco, so he was always like that big city guy, go to a big city. You don't want to be in a small town, Tony. So I kind of took his advice, and
Tampa qualifies as a big city, I would say.
At the time, maybe not, but now it does.
For sure, absolutely. So were you with Kelly at the time?
I was.
You were? Okay.
Yep.
So she came down with you?
Yep. No, she didn't initially.
Okay.
So she wanted, her parents had another plan, and they happened to book a trip to Maine to go visit, I think it was Boston and Maine.
Right.
To go visit and go whale washing, a bunch of stuff. So I wanted her to come down with me, but they sidetracked that. So I got her down a couple weeks later, and she was my first relocation.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. I was driving around, and I'm going to sell Tampa Bay. I'm going to sell Florida. So she went to Disney World. We went to Busch Gardens. We went to the beaches. I mean, we did everything, right? And
so did you know as you were driving down that you were going to get involved in real estate?
I had no idea.
So that
clue.
That happened once you got here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. It took me about 4 or 5 years. So my first career, actually, I full transparency, I came down and I thought everyone's going to want to hire me. And that wasn't the case. I have a college degree.
How could they not want to hire Tony Baroni?
Yeah, I have a college degree. I'm successful, And no one cared, right? So I ended up working in South Tampa at a shoe store as an assistant manager.
Tony Baroni sold shoes.
I did. I absolutely did.
Mr. Al Bundy himself.
Yep.
What do you know?
Yep. And essentially did that for 4 or 5 months and ended up in logistics. So I ended up becoming a logistics consultant after that.
Yeah.
I did that for about 4 or 5 years and worked in Lakeland. So a lot of people ask me, why I ended up where I am, and we live in Fishhawk Ranch, and essentially my wife lived in Tampa or worked in Tampa, and I worked in Lakeland, so it was kind of halfway.
Essentially located, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why we made that home, and
that's a beautiful neighborhood though too. They've grown a lot over the years.
It's
over in
gorgeous,
that area.
Yeah. It's very, very nice, but yeah. So she didn't intend on moving down, and I intended on her moving down, and we showed her everything about Florida and said, hey, why don't you come down? It's the perfect time. And
were you engaged yet, or
no? We were not.
You were not. Okay,
yep.
Just dating at the time.
Just dating at the time. Yep.
So you finally had enough sales skills to talk her down, and she made her way down. And then did real estate happen? I know you worked in this selling shoes and in your other logistics job for a little while. So how did this connection to real estate eventually go down?
Yeah. So logistics consulting. Oh my God, it's crazy. Anyone in the logistic world, I praise you because it is hard.
Yeah.
Like, really, really challenging. I was in something called just-in-time logistics. So meaning if you didn't get the freight there on time, there's major problems.
Sure.
So I worked in the automotive
Hence the
field.
name. Must be on time.
Right. Has to be on time. So I worked in the automotive field and ended up with started with one account, ended up with 5 accounts and a brokerage. And we just grew, and it was awesome. Like, so I became the guy, like, you need a truck or you need something to happen, call Tony.
Okay.
And did that for 4 or 5 years. I was getting woken up in the middle of the night, the majority of nights, where people are calling me, hey, I need to book a plane. And we'd have to get involved, figure out, where the freight was, get them to the airport, hire people at the airport, book a plane, which costs $1 million a lot of the times, right?
Not cheap.
And, basically what would happen, I'd come in the next morning, and whoever had that request, they would then blame it on us that we didn't have the freight there on time or something silly, right? So it's just constant chaos. And I thought to myself, like,
real estate is like no chaos at all, right? Just very
I traded one chaos for another. Let's be clear on that. Right. But real estate seemed easy, right? I'm like, I can do this. So I was buying my first home, and I'm like, I can do this. My realtor, to be honest, wasn't great, and that really opened my eyes of like, I think I can do a good job and do this. And of course, again, I thought it would be easy, and I was wrong about that.
Sure. It's funny though. I hear that story a lot about people having their interest into real estate became because they had a fairly bad experience with their personal agent.
Yeah.
And it was almost like they realized, man, this was not the way it's supposed to be, or at least what their own expectations were about real estate. And it created this niche where it felt like I can fill a need there. And it sounds like that's kind of
that's exactly what it was. So
I'm
like, I think I can do this, and I think I can do it better.
Yeah.
And I just dove in. Like, it took me about a year at the time. I was bartending. Just a little background. I paid for my own school, grew up very humble, humble beginnings. And, so I was bartending. I was doing the logistics job, which was like 78 hours a week. It was crazy. And I still said I wasn't sleeping much. And then I was doing loans at night. I was a loan officer, doing that part-time.
You had a lot going on, man.
A lot going on. And then I was going to real estate school. And once I got my real estate license, I then transitioned. We ended up getting married, put in 60-day notice, and got started. And I went.
What year was that?
Full-time.
You got licensed?
This is 2005.
Okay.
Late 05.
So you're coming up close to the 20-year anniversary, huh?
Yep.
There you go.
Yep, right around the corner.
So you got married shortly thereafter, it sounds like, with Kelly. She was on board with the real estate move, it sounds like, huh?
Yeah, she was. We got married, and then I went into real estate. And, from there, we essentially just dove in.
Yeah.
And
was it all just like unicorns and rainbows in year one?
It was so hard.
As an agent? Or
so hard.
What do you take away from that first year or two?
Yeah, the first year, I think lead with revenue, right? I call it red light, green light, right? Instead of just spending money, thinking like, it's kind of like the college degree. I got my college degree, everyone's going to want to hire me.
Right.
Well, I got my real estate license. I'm just going to do mass mailings and everyone's going to call me.
Right.
That's not how it works, right? So for me, I was spending so much money because I had anticipated going into real estate, and part of my thing was farming. and I didn't know a thing about it, right? So I'm just like, I'm just going to mail all these people. And we did a lot of newsletters, so it was like, watching TV, doing mailings was kind of my routine.
Yeah.
And realized pretty quick, like I was losing a serious amount of money.
Yeah.
And that it wasn't working. So then I pivoted and went to expired listings. So, there was really, at the time, about 3 or 4 major players in the expired world in Tampa Bay. And it's funny, I run into them sometimes. But, that we called religiously every day.
Who's we?
So it was me and then my competitors, right?
Okay.
And at the time, it was most were KW agents that I was competing against.
Okay.
And, figured out, kind of just sheer will, started figuring that out. And
You were just cold calling, basically, right?
cold calling,
Yeah.
100 people a day,
Yeah.
every day.
Yep.
And that's just what I did. And
It's funny because I don't think a lot of agents are willing to do that.
I wasn't until I had to, right? And then I realized, like, this is what I want to do. It's not, I don't want to go back into logistics. Definitely don't want to go back to shoe sales. And, I had a lot of other background, like painting companies I owned and a lot of entrepreneurial stuff that I've done. But I thought, hey, real estate's going to be my thing, and that's what I'm going to stick to. So it's a matter of how I'm going to do it. And I kind of drew a line in the sand, if you will. Like, this is what I'm doing, and I'm not going to go do something else. I'm not going to go part-time and get another job. I'm like, this is what I'm doing.
And you weren't from this area, so it's not like you really had much of a warm market to tap into.
I knew 2 people when I moved here.
Right.
And so, some things that I did was I'd get involved with other things, which I highly recommend any agents to do. Joined a softball team, co-ed softball team, right? And I had 12 people on the team. I ended up over the next 3 years, did business with all of them. Most of them were first-time home buyers. And many of them I've done multiple transactions now, but that's what I'm talking about. How do you meet people, do something that you love, and then
get involved in the community, find your
get
niche.
involved, just like you do, Don. I mean, you do wonderful things in the community, and
it's a process though, because that type of stuff is smart from farming perspectives, but it doesn't happen overnight. Like it's about relationship development.
For me, it was.
And that doesn't happen immediately.
And originally, the expireds were not relationships; it was cold business. But once I got them in my world, hey, do a good job, create this amazing experience, and then hopefully they will refer me and they'll come back. And that's really how we build our business, what I call the 3 R's, which is relationships, reviews, and referrals.
We're going to talk a little bit more about that too, because I think those 3 R's are kind of a cornerstone and a foundation of how you've built your career now, right? Over the years. When you think back again to those first couple of years, were the bulk of your deals coming from the cold call efforts through expireds?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
The majority were expireds, and then after that, I got into short sales.
Okay.
And, essentially, I'd be in the office, my Keller Williams office, and I'd hear agents, I hate short sales. Gosh, short sales suck.
Right. Meanwhile, bells are going off.
Yeah,
in
I'm
your
just
head.
like, I think
sounds like an opportunity.
I think I have to do that.
Right.
And I ended up, my first one, I didn't know it was my first one, went out and I called my mentor because I was on a team with Keller Williams.
Yeah. So you've been with KW the whole time?
Actually, since 2007.
Okay.
05 to 07, I was with another company.
Okay.
And essentially, I ended up with short sales. Everyone's like, I don't want to do them, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, this is something I probably need to learn. And
that was the key short sale season, wasn't it? Like
oh
2007
my gosh,
through 9 in that market.
I was definitely one of the short sale kings
and
queens of the area. Just at the end of the day, people needed help. So I took this listing and I called my mentor. I'm like, I've got a weird thing. And he's like, what? I'm like, the people don't have equity. Like, I think they owe actually more than what their house is worth. And he goes, you know what? This happened in the 1980s. Here's what you need to do. Call the bank and then call this. Hold on, let me look it up. And he got back to me. He's like, call the loss mitigation department.
Yeah.
And I'm like, loss mitigation? What's that? And needless to say, that became like my next 3 or 4 years. That's what I did every day, right? And so I started working with basically people that needed to short sale their homes due to job loss, due to all different circumstances. And we ended up selling a couple hundred listings from short sales.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's interesting though that you have seemed to have been willing to do things that other people aren't willing to do, like calling the expired listings. Like, that's not a secret strategy. I mean, anyone has access to doing that, but the willingness to commit to it, like you said, 100 cold calls a day, that's just a mentality, right? It's just being consistent and going after it.
Being committed, right?
For
and
sure.
I told you I drew the line in the sand, and
right.
I think that's what people need to do right now. As if you're newer to real estate, it got harder, right? It didn't get easier. So you just got to say, hey, this is what I want to do. And if you want to do it, you'll find a way, right? And for expireds, part of how I got into referrals was simply I didn't want to call 100 people every day.
Right.
So I started rewarding myself. If I could get a referral from my client at the closing table, it's kind of my strategy, then I'd give myself the next day off from calling 100 people. And I got pretty good at getting referrals because, quite frankly, I didn't want to call 100 people.
Makes sense. That's a strong motivation.
Kind of the handshake deal I made myself, right?
Yeah.
And I got really, really good at earning referrals and setting expectations and eventually reviews, which was really around 2009, 2010 was when I started really getting into that. And deciding, hey, if I can get reviews, great. I want to know how I'm doing. And if I know I'm delivering a 5-star experience, they'll do a 5-star review for me. And
the 3 R's again are referrals, reviews, and what was the first one? Relationships. Okay. So what do you think, Tony, made you different than, I'm assuming any agent you talk to is going to say, I want to build relationships, right? I want to focus on relationships. I want to focus on a referral-based business, but not everybody executes it very well.
Sure.
What do you think, even in those early days, distinguished you from some of the other agents who probably had similar intentions, but just weren't executing it?
I had a handful of people I was meeting, and then I did softball, and I was doing stuff like that. I ended up joining BNI, met like amazing people through BNI, other people that were building their business like me through word of mouth, relationship type deal. And quite frankly, I just started running out of friends. You ended up doing business with all my friends, and then I'm like, I need to meet more people. So then I would say, okay, I'm going to do softball, and then it was basketball, and then it was, I grew up playing a lot of sports, so I've just really gravitated to that. And then eventually coaching that we were talking about before all of this. And I became a baseball coach, became a football coach. And, then at some point, I think people look at you on, they look at you as Coach Tony, right? And then at some point there becomes a transition where they think of you as Realtor Tony, Realtor Tony Baroni, right? And I think that needs to happen organically versus me throwing a business card and, ultimately trying to win over everyone for their business.
Sure.
They might see a sign, they may read a review, they may, and then they're like, wait, that's the kid, he coaches my son, right?
Yeah.
And over time, you end up doing a lot of business from meeting people that way as well. Also teaching, agent referrals is one of our number one source of business. So, we go out and teach, and when we do so, people appreciate that, and, they send referrals, and we cover the coast to coast of Central Florida, so it brings a lot of opportunities.
Were you teaching even in those early days?
So, funny story with short sales, my broker came to me and said, hey, no one knows how to do short sales. I know you're doing a ton of them. Will you teach? And I'm like, I remember thinking like, I have no idea how to teach.
Right.
I thought to myself.
Right.
And so she convinced me to do a monthly, it was like Wednesday, at 2:00 every month, like the last Wednesday or whatever. So I'd show up. Sometimes there'd be one person in there as it was building, and they'd go, got a question.
Yeah.
How do you handle this with Chase Bank, right? Whatever their specific question was.
Yeah.
And then became like this course, right, where I did a 1 or 2, I think it was 2 hours. And then eventually what happened was people would raise their hand and they go, got a question, Tony. This is way too complicated. Will you just take my short sale over? I don't want to do it. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what happened. And we ended up getting a lot of referrals from agents within our own office because they just didn't want to do it, and they didn't know how. And they thought, hey, if I can get a referral fee, this is great.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it's funny, in the time I've known you, and obviously we're going to get to how you've built your team as well over the years, you have a reputation, it seems like, of really being an educator. there's a culture, I think, within your organization of people learning a lot, and and really having a mentality of wanting to grow and wanting to learn and being willing to share. And I know you, like I said earlier, you've been on multiple panels for us and been giving
Sure.
back to the community. And so, sometimes that's just different than how some people operate, right, in their business.
Sure.
And I think, especially in the real estate world, there's still many out there who kind of view it more as a competitive, cutthroat type of an approach versus the collaboration, education angle, which it seems like you've thrived in how you've built your organization. And we've had you on a panel before to talk about referrals specifically. And it seems like, again, that's a big part of your business. So are there some key things that you would share about just that specific thing of referral building that you've found that's really worked for you and in your approaches and your systems? What are some things you can touch on there?
Yeah, I think with referrals, and you mentioned before, like Tony Robbins, right? Like I'm a big fan. I know you are.
Yeah.
And I think, going to some of his stuff has really taught me about relationships.
We're both business mastery graduates. I think
right.
I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Just some of the things you take away along the way. But with referrals specifically, I think that just do things different than everyone else, and that may sound like, well, what does that mean? Well, just try not to be like every other agent. And to me, that means that I'm not going to even say I'm a realtor, right? Like when I meet people, that's like the last part.
Wait, Tony, isn't that illegal to not?
Right. Here's my card.
Don't disclose that I'm an agent.
Right. But, at the end of the day, like build a relationship first. Like how ridiculous is it to walk up to someone, and I've been at certain networking things where this is actually the norm. And it's like, hey, my name's someone, and they're not even listening to anything you say, and they're just trying to hand you their card. Right. And I thought to myself, like, ugh, this is not how I want to be, right? So for me, it became pretty easy, like add value first, right? If you are able to add value in people's lives, then you're going to potentially do business naturally, right, over time. So that's been my approach, just in general, whether it's the real estate community, whether it's my clients, through, we do giveaways, we do all kinds of stuff, charity events here where we raise a lot of money locally for all different charities. But it's kind of that giving mentality first, right? Giving is living,
serving the community.
Living is giving, or what Tony Robbins says. And really, I've taken that and I've really decided like that's going to be how I think about it. And the more people you meet, the more money you'll end up making, the more business you'll do.
Right.
And I think you have to have the relationship first before you start asking for stuff, right? So I call it making deposits, right? So I'm going to make deposits in other people before I ask for a withdrawal. Right?
Makes sense.
But I'm also going to do that with clients. So
it's really how I would view servant leadership, right? How are you willing to serve first before you know that you're going to be adding value? That's really what a servant leader does. It focuses on value add first.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what people want, right?
For sure.
No one likes where you're hitting them up before you even know them. So I think for us, it's very simple. When we meet people, we're going to set that expectation, right? Like, I'm going to give you this. In return, I expect when we deliver that ultimately you're going to support me. Yeah. And how we want that done is essentially we want to be introduced by you to other people that have real estate needs. And that's really how we frame it. And I'll tell you that when you do that and you provide the service that you're talking about, the 5-star experience, people will naturally do that for you. They'll actually go to bat for you and want to give you business. Yeah. And I think in sales, we just don't realize, like, you have to set the expectation. Everyone's in the 9 to 5, their 9 to 5 job or whatever they do. Yeah. And, Don Hill and Tony Baroni aren't top of mind, right? Sure. But if you provide an amazing service.
Tony might be, but definitely not Don Hill.
They're not, believe me. So, you provide this amazing service, they're going to naturally want to help you if you ask for help. Right? But you got to ask. Yeah. But it starts with delivering first, right? I don't ask for referrals before I know them or before I've given them the experience. You got to give them the 5-star experience, and then you're going to naturally, have conversations throughout the transaction. And then when you get to the end, you're going to set that expectation again that you want to earn their business. Because one thing you may not realize, especially the real producers, like that are doing a ton of business, they may not think that you want any more business.
Right.
They're like,
too busy to handle it.
You're too busy to handle it, right? I get that when I get referrals. Hey, I don't know if you want this one. And it's like a $1 million referral. I'm like, yeah, we'll take that one. You know, or it may be a first-time home buyer, and they're like, this is the first time home buyer. Like, great.
You might be too big for this.
Yeah, well, the first-time home buyer is going to end up moving the most, right?
Totally.
So that's one of the most valuable things. I think that
it's a good point.
People get tripped up over commission and, you know, money, and just take care of people.
Yeah.
And if you take care of people, they'll take care of you.
It's a great point. You mentioned also the power of reviews and how your business has focused on that. It seems like over the last, few years, I'd say, or even longer. When you think about how that evolved from this initial approach to just adding value, focusing on relationships, building relationships, that leads to a referral culture, right?
Yeah.
Where people start referring because they like your experience and they're willing to, as you said, they felt like that you've added value to them. They're willing to bring your name up when someone has a need, right?
Yeah.
In real estate, that leads to this referral culture. Any thoughts on how the review thing has grown? Is that a specific thing that you've put into place that's helped create that animal for your business? Because I do think nowadays that's something a lot of agents want. Don't really know how to get it moving. Don't know how to really get it started. How has that worked for you?
Yeah, I think from an importance point of view, right? Think back in the last week of a major purchase, maybe a minor purchase.
Yep.
Did you read reviews?
Most of the time.
Okay. So it just has kind of been embedded in our world, right? That's just how we look at things. We're going to, call it Amazon. We're going to go on Amazon and they have the best choice, Amazon's pick, whatever. And then you're probably going to check reviews and be like, hey, then you're going to go, what do you do next? Do you read all the positive reviews or read the negative reviews?
Always negative, of course.
Right. Because you're like, I don't want to see like the problem with this, right?
Sure.
And then naturally people go, that person's crazy. Like you ever read a review, you're like, this person seems nuts.
Yes.
Like this 1-star review, like, and then in certain websites, you can see how many other negative reviews they've given. Yeah. You kind of throw those out. You're like, I'm not even worried about it, right?
Right.
But the point is, like, I think everyone, that's how important reviews are. And I've known that for a long time because that's how I think about it too. And if you're trying to get started getting reviews, it starts with, if you have 0, you need to get 1.
Yep.
And then you need to get
your mom
10.
or dad if needed, something.
Yeah,
get it
you
started.
need to get 10, 20. And I believe they need to be real reviews. So I would argue, instead of mom or whoever, I wouldn't even ask, like, unless it's a real review, because I want consistency throughout my reviews of the same themes of like what people say that they naturally say versus me telling them to say, right? And over time, when we're just under 2,500 reviews now, it becomes very powerful, right? It becomes part of your value proposition that, hey,
Is it always Google reviews, Facebook reviews? Do you focus on one or the other?
All of them. Yeah,
any reviews, just wherever.
Really, whatever they want.
Yeah,
whatever they prefer to do it on, and then we're going to add them up. So, and that's just something we focus on. We want to know we're delivering a 5-star experience, and we're going to ask for them. And then what happens is people end up finding you online a lot when you have a lot of reviews, and that's who they're going to turn. And realtors too. Realtors will do the same thing that consumers do. I have a client moving to Tampa. Hey, who should I connect with, right? Yeah. And so you get a lot of business from it too. And then the client, you did a good job for, which is the ultimate goal. Yep. Right. And if they won't do a review, we're going to wonder why. Like, we probably need to dig in deep and like, did I do something
causing
wrong?
That lack of wanting or being willing to take that action?
Yeah.
There's a reason behind it.
Yeah. And some people just won't, right?
Yeah.
So we just try to address all of that up front. And if we're able to deliver a 5-star experience to you, are you willing to do a review for us?
For sure. Right?
And they'll say yes. 90% of the time, the 10% that won't, you kind of shrug it off and you laugh and you say, well, my goal is to get you to change that. Yeah. I want you to start doing reviews. So I'm going to do such a good job that you're going to be compelled to do a review for me.
And you create that expectation even prior to the service being provided?
The moment we meet.
Okay.
We're talking about it. Yep.
That's cool. We talked, actually, I just finished an episode with Captain Bruce Urbick, and a lot of our conversation was about expectations and shaping expectations. And that's what you're hitting on here too, is the idea of creating the right expectations right away with each person that you're meeting with, so that they know hopefully what And you're always going to want to try to exceed their expectations as well, but also just what your what that return looks like,
sure.
whether that's a review or a referral or whatever the case may be. But I think those 3 R's, relationships, referrals, and reviews, is a great point for anybody who might be listening in to be able to take and just give himself a little checkup, on a scale of 1 to 10. Where do you think your business right now is operating on those 3 levels? Where can you make little tweaks to improve?
Yeah.
And if you operate a business with those as your principles, I just have to believe that's more fun of a business to be a part of than one who's solely driven on cold calling expireds,
Yeah, for me, I've done both, right?
Yeah.
So I can tell you one's much more rewarding than the other from that perspective. But, make no mistake, those expireds and short sales become relationships too.
Of course.
It's just hard to get the business, right? So you have to really
you got to overcome the lack of trust factor.
So what we've really done, Don, to sum it up, how do you get your phone to ring and people inquire to you versus calling outbound is kind of where we're at now. And not that we don't call outbound, but we do, but it's mainly lead follow-up at that point, right? It's following up with people that reached out. And that's where it gets cool. That's where it gets really awesome, where you're like, people are seeking you down. I remember my first 5 years, I looked at my office phone and I'm thinking like, how do I get this thing to ring?
Yeah.
Like, I just was so frustrated. I'm like, I just thought it would.
Yeah.
And then I realized, well, it's not, and then expired, short sales. And then I evolved. The next thing was, could I shift from short sales to regular listings? Because at the time, I'm like, I didn't know if I could because I was pretty known for short sales.
Were you starting to be pigeonholed as the short sale guy?
I absolutely was known for that in the area. And so I was like, will people hire me just as a normal listing agent?
Right.
And they did, right? And I was doing about 100 a year myself before I started building out my team. I do about 100 listings every year.
Pretty solid volume, buddy.
What's that?
Pretty solid volume, 100 a year.
It was, well, and it was a lot of work. And mind you, during that time, at one point...
And that was sold. Basically, that was just individual, right? For the most part?
Yeah, that's only me on my
that's
team. I had a couple
personally.
other people on my team doing, another 50 units. But the reality was,
what was your best year as an individual agent? Do you remember? In terms of volume?
I think, I haven't been an individual agent except for 3 months my whole career. So I've always...
Oh, you started team building right away?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yep.
Okay, because I wanted to talk about that too, is how that's evolved.
Yeah, and growing up playing sports, I assume, I don't know exactly why, but I always thought it was so boring by myself.
Sure.
So when I transitioned off a team and started my own, I wouldn't call it a team, I was solo.
Yeah.
I planned on starting a team immediately, yet I was like, okay, let me get cracking here and get things going. Mm-hmm. So it took me about 3 months to hire my first person. And
so the Tony Baroni team started pretty quickly. It was within your first year of being licensed.
Within 3 months.
Yeah.
Because I hired my first person, probably 2 to 3 months, somewhere in that room.
Gotcha.
That range. But my best individual year was about 104 sales myself, and I about killed myself, and and I realized like that's not the life I want to live.
Yeah.
And for me personally, what started that, I hired a coach. Mm-hmm. That coach, our first call, he goes, "Tony, tell me about your schedule." Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay. So I pulled it up. I'm like, all right. So I have 4 listing appointments, 1 staging appointment, 2 photography sessions, and lead follow-up. And then I remember saying this, I'm like, between midnight and 2 a.m., I'm going to input a listing that needs to go on the market. And he goes, man, Tony, your life sucks. And I go, yeah, it does. And he goes, seriously though, this sounds terrible, man. And he's like, so we need to start fixing this. So the first thing he was like, go hire a photographer.
Yeah.
And I argued for 30 minutes how I was a better photographer than other photographers, like a bunch of silliness, right? Mm-hmm. And but looking back, he started taking away this, taking away that. And for those that, for me, I would work 1 or 2 or 3 buyers at a time, and which was fine, and I loved doing it. But then I went and hit my listing goal, right? Mm-hmm. So he asked me one day, he goes, Tony, what's your role on the team? I'm like, well, I'm CEO. He's like, yeah, but as far as an agent, what are you? And I'm like, well, I'm the listing agent. He's like, okay, well, shouldn't you hit your listing goal every month? And I'm like, yeah. And then I'd make excuses for, well, I'm working with this buyer and that buyer. He's like, okay, well, what if you don't do that anymore and you just focus on hitting your number, hit your listing number? And I remember I was 4 short, and he had me do the math. He's like, okay, so what's the average commission? 4 sales, okay, rough numbers, 40 grand a month, okay. What's 40 times 12? And I'm like, oh, that's this. And he's like, okay, so that's the opportunity you're missing because you're not doing your job properly.
Yeah,
like,
that's an eye-opener.
Ouch. So I just started hiring people for individual, very specialized. Our team's extremely specialized.
Yeah.
Kind of like the assembly line, it's kind of how we're
Got your own
set
Henry
up.
Ford plant going on over there, huh?
Well, and what I found is people in their strength zone love what they do.
No doubt.
And you're not going to be great at anything. You can't be great at everything anyway.
Right.
So for me, learning that the hard way has really given me a life that I want to live. Right. It's not about money or it's how do you still have a great
Lifestyle.
life, which is really important to me. I know it is for you as well.
No doubt. And you went into a lot of different areas there that I feel like if we had more time, we can dive into because there's a lot we can talk about there. I think, at least from what I've seen from my perspective over the last few years, you have a great reputation as a team builder. I mentioned that earlier, and obviously your peers feel that way, or else you wouldn't have won at the Agent Choice Awards this past year. What are some things, Tony, that you think for people out there who maybe are in the process of building a team or are maybe wanting to go into it for the first time? They've been an individual person production-wise for the last few years, and they're thinking, I think this team thing is for me. There's something missing, and I feel like I can want to build it with people. What are some quick thoughts you can share on just ways that you feel like have really helped you in the team building journey specifically? Mistakes maybe you've made that you've learned from, or a strength that has been a foundational pillar of building a great team.
I think it goes back to the strength zone. So what are you great at? Energy is important, right? Where do you love to spend your energy? If you don't like doing something, I would start here. Like, make a list. The left side would be what you love to do. Right side would be what I hate to do, right? What you hate to do, when you come up with that list, you see how you get that off your plate. So you can spend time on the stuff you love to do, and that's about as simplistic as I can say it. But there's ways of, there's a lot of opportunity for hiring right now. Virtual assistants. We have 3 full-time virtual assistants on our team.
Yep.
We have a lot of in-house people as well. But there's a company called Cyberbacker that is amazing, and our 3 are cyberbackers, and they train them first 10 days. It's a very detailed process, and we have them doing everything back end that's task driven, and it's pretty awesome, man. And like at the end of the day, like if you're a solo agent, maybe it's a VA first, maybe it's a marketing person first, maybe it's a showing assistant, It just depends what you want to get off your plate. What I did was whoever showed up, that's how I'd hire them, which I wouldn't recommend, but that's what I did. And for me,
it's a common mistake, I think, for people that find themselves wanting to build.
Yeah. Like the millionaire.
Just out of need, like hiring out of need rather than out of really a clarified idea of what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And who fits that bill.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the book I highly recommend is Millionaire Real Estate Agent, written by Gary Keller. He started Keller Williams, billionaire. Pretty smart guy.
He's a mentor of yours, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. And
you've been on a couple masterminds with him, I think I've
seen.
I'm
in his top 100 group, which I'm really thrilled since 2018. And he's been amazing. But the book is pretty outstanding. And in his book, it talks about hire a marketing person first, like build your business so big that you have enough business before you bring on other agents. Because if you hire agents first, you don't have the business.
Yeah.
It depends, like, are you giving them leads? Or are they going out to get leads? All that matters too. But, you could just literally follow that book and build an amazing team.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of hiccups along the way, right? Like hiring's not easy. hiring process. How do you do that?
It's a learning curve.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff that KW offers, I'm very grateful for because I've learned all of that through the company I work with, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, definitely KW is known for its training programs and what it tries to provide newer agents, but even people like yourself that are seasoned but are taking things to the next level and building mega agent type status and going from there. So I think that's one of the things it's really been built on is the strength from that. For people who might not know you much on the personal side, Tony, I know we already mentioned you're married to your beautiful wife Kelly. You have a couple of kids. We talked about your coaching experience there as well. I know that is important to you. You mentioned lifestyle a few minutes ago. What are some of the things that you guys still love to do? Like what keeps you ticking and keeps that balance in your life? Yeah,
so I describe our family as like if anyone's ever seen Trading Spouses, it's like that. I love that. It was always so funny to me. But we're the crazy sports family.
Yeah.
And usually they'll have a family that don't do a whole lot, and then a family that's the crazy sports family. We're the crazy sports family that, running around we literally have practice every night. We're taking our kids. My son plays flag football and he plays baseball, very competitively. And then and he's 12 and my daughter's 14. Her team was, ranked number 4 in the nation last season. And, so we're traveling, doing the sports thing. And we love it, love every minute of it. And that's how I grew up. That's how my wife grew up. So
that's cool.
We spend a lot of time. We love going to the beach anytime we can, love seafood.
I think you're in the right area for that.
Yeah. Love grilling, like smoking meat, and sports,
So you got your Bucks shirt on today, huh?
Bucks,
excited about Sunday?
Got to support them. Yeah.
Ready for the launch this week, the season kickoff here?
Yep. I'm a season ticket holder for the Bucks. Yeah. Yep. And but yeah, we're
go to every home game?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I wish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely don't go to every game, but I've been a Lightning season ticket holder at times. Not currently, but I have been at times.
Yeah.
And we just love sports and love hanging out, friends and family, and
no doubt,
stuff like that.
Yeah, man.
Fishing. Forgot that. Love to
gotta
fish.
add that in there.
Love to go fishing
for sure. A couple rapid fire questions again for somebody who might not know you that much personally. So, do you have a favorite? You already mentioned one book. Maybe this is the answer, but do you have a favorite book or author or even a seminar that you feel like has influenced you the most professionally and personally?
Wow. So Tony Robbins is one of my favorite. I recommend this app called Blinkist. It summarizes books, 15 minutes. It's awesome. So in 1 week, you could listen to all Tony Robbins books, for example, all the summary of them, right? A couple books I really like is Rocket Fuel.
Yeah.
And then Traction.
EOS system, baby.
Yep.
Have you implemented that in your business?
Actually, I have.
Yeah.
Yep. So we just redid our core values.
Allows you to do all this traveling for the sports side and still actually have an organization. Huh?
That's right.
Yeah.
Core mission, core values. Our team just went through all of that and redid it all. We have something called Captain of Core Values on our team that people nominate one another, and then whoever gets the most votes gets a gift card for a massage.
That's cool.
Yeah, so we do little things like that culturally that I think is pretty cool. And then Simon Sinek's one of my favorite authors, Malcolm Gladwell.
Some great names there for sure.
Autobiographies and
got a favorite movie or TV show?
So movie, I'd say I love The Family Man. Have you ever seen that?
I don't think so. Who's it?
So it's about like a guy if he would have went this route versus that route,
okay,
and like how his life would have been.
Is it a comedy?
No, it's definitely not a comedy. It's more of like it's played actually during the holiday season a lot of the time.
Okay.
Really great movie. Nicolas Cage is in it. But it's just a cool movie.
Okay.
I don't know why I just thought of that. I haven't thought about that
because you are a family man, man. I get
I guess. I guess so. And what was the other question?
I was just asking either movie or TV show.
TV show. Oh, man. I love, right now, my favorite is Untold on Netflix, which are documentaries about
I've been
sports.
watching them myself.
Oh my gosh.
You see the Tim Tebow one with the Gators?
That was awesome.
That was cool.
Yeah, I just got to see him speak a couple weeks ago, too,
nice.
at a conference. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I read a couple of his books. I've always admired his testimony and how he has positioned himself out there and been very bold with his faith and everything.
Yeah.
Obviously Had a
pretty
great
awesome.
career at UF, that's for sure.
Think he's doing okay.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
I think he's doing all right.
Yeah.
And they just had one on Johnny Manziel as well. Did you see that one too?
That was crazy.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Total opposite extreme from Tebow, huh?
Yeah. So for me, I think, Untold is my favorite at the moment.
Yeah.
But, I like to watch TV. I know some people are like, I never watch TV. I love watching TV.
I like watching stuff that's inspiring.
I do too.
I'm a sports guy like you. I mean, I just pretty much if I'm watching TV, it's a game. But if I'm not, it's a documentary.
Yep, me too.
That could be like Untold, or I've actually been watching Suits lately on Netflix.
Okay, yeah.
Have you seen that at all?
I have not.
I'm not usually into that stuff as far as the dramas and whatnot, but I've gotten hooked on it. It's like it's business savvy, so it's about the lawyer world. But I found it kind of interesting, so I've been learning some things about the legal side of things, I guess, from Suits.
Yeah, that looks like a cool series, and so I watch like an hour a night is basically what I do. So
right. Put you to
maybe
sleep,
9:30 to 10:30. I might, I'm gonna watch probably some series on Netflix or whatever.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And you are, I'd be remiss not to mention your dad's famous sauce, because from a favorite food standpoint, is it Italian? I think anything Italian, or is there something specific that?
Yeah, food wise, I mean, my dad kind of ruined food for me because he was this amazing chef, and he passed away about 11 years ago, and pretty much I don't like Italian food anymore. No offense to anyone out there. But he spoiled me, and he just made the best food. So Italian wise, he, luckily before he passed, I drove up to Illinois and learned how to make the sauce. So we have Papa Baroni's pasta sauce.
Those of you who don't know the story, you used to use that sauce as one of your relationship building strategies, right?
I did.
That was how you got some of those initial clients, or at least added value, I would say, to the relationships that you had. I thought it was great. He told it at one of our panels about how he utilized his dad's famous sauce as one of his strategies.
Yep. Used the gravy, made it once a month, canned it, packaged it.
And who doesn't love like something that takes that time, homemade? Like, it's from the heart, right? I mean, people love that. So
I mean, one of my clients, I think that was so powerful to them specifically. They ended up buying 42 properties with me.
That's awesome.
And they were an investor. She actually had a real estate license in North Carolina. And when we met, we did our first deal together. And needless to say, I didn't know they were multimillionaire investors. But she's like, you know what, Tony, I'm not even going to get my real estate license. If I can get a can of this sauce after the closing, I'm good, right?
Dude, that's crazy.
So 42,
who would have thought?
42
can of sauce
closings.
led to 42 more deals.
It was a sign call.
That's amazing.
It's all originally. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. But, I do that for co-brokers and clients. And, had kids. I blame it on my kids. I shouldn't, but I basically quit doing it when I had kids.
Right.
So now I need to figure that out.
It takes some time to do the sauce the right way, I take it, huh?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's a commitment.
The goal is
you ain't just whip that together. It takes a little process.
Yeah, we're going to be on the shelf of Publix someday. Nice. Papa Baroni pasta sauce.
There you go. So. Maybe your kids can pick up the mantle and
that's what I'm thinking.
Start leading the way.
That's
Why
what
not?
I'm thinking. Get them cooking some
budding
gravy.
Entrepreneurs out there. Let's make it happen.
Cooking some gravy. I like it.
So crazy how time flew. We're out of time for the most part, but let me end with one of my favorite questions, which is before I do that, if somebody wants to follow up with you, sometimes we'll have people who might want to pick your brain just about something you brought up, or ask for some advice potentially. What's the best way to get a hold of Tony Baroni?
Yeah, I think social media, at Tony Baroni Team, Instagram, Facebook, same thing.
Cool.
That'd be the easiest way.
Yeah. That's the camera, I guess, you want to look at for all that stuff. So we'll throw it up there on the screen so you guys can check out. And if all you got to do is Google Tony with his 2,500 reviews, and you'll find them out there. It's not an issue. But last question, Tony, is simply this. When you think about your legacy, when you build your business, and even on a personal level, when you one day look back at what you think you'd want to be most remembered for, what do you think that would be?
Gosh, you ask tough questions, Don. I'm used to easy questions. I would say, that I just gave my best, right? I think it sums it up for me. And what I love about that mission is ultimately you're never going to reach it, right? So you wake up every day knowing there's room for improvement, and you're constantly counterbalancing, right? Like maybe business is going great and your personal life is crap, right? Like if that's the case, then I think always adjusting and understanding where you're at, and then making those adjustments and for me, it's just, being the best person I can be, whether that's a dad, husband, realtor, business owner, teammate, you name it, right?
Yep.
And to me, that's the ultimate goal and something I strive for, and it goes back to what you were talking about earlier, being learning based and continuing to, how do you get better, and
yep.
how do you learn from your failures, essentially, because you're going to learn a lot more through your failures than you will your successes. So some of this is just, if you're hesitating to get into something, just go and you'll figure it out, right? Like this podcast, we were talking about that before. You're like,
that's right.
I just started it, and I'm sure you've learned a lot, right?
Absolutely.
And you're like, now I need to do this, now I need to do that. But the key is getting started.
I agree. I think the growth mindset is critical, and it's a trait that not everybody has or adopts. But I think you've obviously shown that in your willingness to call, expireds when you first started, and I'm sure you weren't the best at it when you made those first couple of calls.
Horrible.
I'm sure there was a learning process out of that, and then
Big time.
Eventually evolving more into how you've refined your referral systems and your relationship programs, and I think from my perspective, again, and from what I hear in the chatter in the real estate community, when people think of Tony Baroni's team, there's a lot of respect there, and people view your organization as one that's very well run, one that I think is very support driven, and has great systems and programs that seem to really help your agents and serve the community. So I thank you for that and for being a great leader. And for those of you who have watched the episode, if you're watching live on Facebook, you also, of course, could be watching our official episode on our YouTube channel. I would just encourage you, and we'll end this episode the way we always do, and that's with a challenge. And it is to take one action step from our conversation today that you can put to work. So whether that's professional or personal, maybe you have to work a little bit on your 3 R's, right? Relationships, referrals, or reviews. Maybe there's something there that has to be tweaked in your business. Maybe it's just one of the books that Tony mentioned that you want to go ahead and pick up and read. And maybe you have to make a decision on whether you're going to commit to building the team or commit to a specific strategy and actually just stay true to that process and go through it and stay consistent. There's a lot that we discussed today that I think could be relevant if you take one nugget, but I encourage you and challenge you to pick one thing that you can put to work that would make the time that you invested in watching this worth it. If you don't do anything, if you don't do any action step, then you're going to probably regret the fact that you invested the time and you could be doing something else. So do an action step. It'll make it worth it. It'll move you forward in your professional career, as well as maybe even on the personal side as well. So it was great to have you here, my man.
Thanks for having me.
This was fun. I've been looking forward to having you on the podcast since we started this thing.
It's been
awesome.
awesome.
So I'm glad we had a chance to connect. And we'll see, of course, on the next episode of Tampa Bay Real Producers. So stay classy, guys. We'll see you later.